everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sofa Series Artist Spotlight. Today with me is the beautiful and wonderful Jonathan Piper, who is a tubist and a noise improviser, music sound maker, and just an all-around wonderful guy. Thank you so much for joining me, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me, Leslie.
Oh, sure, my
You're
pleasure.
you're you're too kind.
Oh, stop it. You are.
Oh,
Oh, no. Wouldn't that be great? The interview is just this feedback loop of us going like, no, you are. No, you are. That would be terrible. So tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do. What is it that lights your fire?
oh, jeez.
Terrible question.
I didn't know it was that kind of interview.
Well,
Um, so yeah, my name is Jonathan. I grew up here in San Diego, up in Rancho Penasquitos.
Rancho
Um,
Penasquitos.
PQ. Uh, I won't get into all the silly nicknames we learned as a kid. Um, but yeah, went to let's see, grew up here in San Diego. Played the tuba in middle school and high school, marching band, all that good stuff. Went off to UCLA to become a performer, and kind of burned out on that. Just wasn't really digging the performer life. Was just
Mhm.
kind of having trouble, I guess, with the competitive aspect of it. Like the idea
Mhm.
of competing to play music with people, just kind of got kind of boring after, or not boring, just annoying.
Yeah.
Um, and so I made the brilliant decision to go into musicology, um, because at the time it was like a kind of a new and exciting thing for me. I was getting really interested in history and analysis and
Mhm.
sort of the socio-political, cultural context of music. Um, so I got really interested in contemporary music, and um, UCSD was kind of a big target spot for me to look at. My short list of schools. I applied and I got in. I went to UCSD and just kind of again got bummed out by just the competition of it. And it was just kind of hard to feel like I could just kind of do something that I wanted to do at my own pace.
Mhm.
So it was difficult for me to kind of find my footing, but I bounced around between topics, digital music. I wrote my thesis on emo music and suburban landscapes,
Of course you did.
which was really great.
Yeah.
um, and then I kind of got into music and violence was kind of this emerging topic when I was really trying to solidify a dissertation topic. And then that kind of led me into just looking at heavy metal studies. And then I wrote my dissertation on doom metal. And I think to date, it's one of just a couple of pieces of scholarship written specifically about doom metal. Um, and that was a lot of fun. And then I kind of got out and was applying for jobs, and it didn't. I'm not a competitive person.
Mhm.
I just want to research and play music. um,
Mhm.
and I don't know if that's kind of boring, but that's just kind of what I wanted to do. And I just didn't have the fire to like compete for these jobs. I just wanted to teach.
Mhm.
Um, and so then I kind of found a couple of jobs around town, and it all felt like bouncing. But then I found a job at the Museum of Making Music up in Carlsbad, and that's been really amazing. And I get to teach people about music and instruments, and people who make instruments, and people who play instruments, and people who sell instruments. And um, I get to research, and I get to teach, and I get to put together really awesome exhibitions and work with really cool people. And that has like let me have a lot more creative energy to myself. So I feel like I'm in a much better place now than I had been, and I don't feel like I'm competing with anybody, which is
That's so
amazing.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to talk about that because I think so. A lot of the other players and instrumentalists, and I brought a little bit of this up about being burnt out. So maybe you can talk to so the path of a like a classical tuba player, like what is the career with the capital C? What is that timeline supposed to look like? Like when are you supposed to get your first orchestra gig? When like how does that work?
Um, that's a really tough question,
Mm-hmm.
um, because there are several different paths. The path that a lot of people follow is you get your DMA, um, and as you're getting your DMA, you're playing in a couple of regional orchestras. Maybe you're starting to go out to festivals. You're doing summer camps, that kind of thing. You're building up your reputation. And then you probably win a regional or like even kind of like semi-regional orchestra job. You use that as the leverage for that's on your CV for your next audition, and you kind of climb the ranks until you hit either a major regional orchestra or sort of one of the nationally recognized orchestras, and that's kind of where you get to. um, the difficult reality of that is the because you typically have one tubist per orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
um, you know it's there are very few of these spots that open.
Unless it's
um,
like some weird niche orchestra that only plays Wagner operas, you know?
right, yeah, but even then you're going to have the one guy who got that gig and
Yeah.
is never going to leave.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the reality of it. Somebody might win that job in their 30s or 40s, maybe 50s, and they're
That's it.
not leaving.
Yeah, that's a good job.
um, yeah, it's a great job. It's
It's
stability.
secure. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then kind of on the flip side of that is, as we've seen a lot of budget cuts for the arts, for orchestras, state funding getting cut, city, county funding getting cut, a lot of the regional orchestras are having difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
And so those jobs might dry up. So you have this sort of the preservation of like the jobs at the top get frozen. People don't leave those jobs. And the jobs at the bottom and the middle get fewer and farther between. Um, and so it ends up just being hyper competitive, to the point where you'll have hundreds, maybe even 1,000 people submit tapes for one of these
One.
orchestra gigs.
Yeah.
um, you'll get hundreds of people driving into the music hall to compete with each other. Army jobs, the military band jobs that maybe weren't as competitive before are suddenly super competitive. Like, okay, I'll go through basic training if it means having a stable job doing this thing that I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so people are having to get a lot more creative. So you have this a glut of people, putting content online, trying to set up teaching studios. But again, it just ends up being everyone trying to get their little piece of it because they want to be able to survive and subsist on what they love doing. Um, and I was just having a really hard time reconciling that reality with just kind of what motivates me. Um, I love playing the tuba, but I don't want to be in that constant state of flux and change and traveling across the country to find that little orchestra gig. It just I didn't have the drive for that. I didn't have the fire for that. Other people do,
And
and that's
the
amazing.
money, it's expensive to try. It's expensive to
Yeah,
become to get that job,
yeah,
You
yeah.
go into so much debt just for the schooling alone, but then all of your recording, all of your, promotional stuff, that's all out of
Mm-hmm.
pocket. Getting there is all out of pocket. I don't think people quite
Right,
realize it. It's like, oh well, you're just like such a bohemian, you're such an artist. You just like
right.
you do your passion, right? It's your passion. It's like, well,
Yeah,
a lot of it sucks. A lot of it sucks.
right. Yeah. I mean, it kind of killed me. I mean, when doing the G Burns Jug Band, and we would go on tour,
Hmm.
um, and it was the kind of thing where like I would save up my vacation days at one of my jobs, and I would blow all my vacation time on a tour for this band, and then we'd be busking and losing money on the situation, and somebody walks up and puts $1 in the tip jar and says, wow, it's so great that you're living your dream. and and I just kind of have to hold it in and say like I am this is
This is
oh
not.
this is not what I dreamed of.
How How cute.
Yeah.
Heck, oh yeah. Okay, well then let's get off of the competitive thing because I could go on and
Yeah.
on and be like, in this sort of hateful spiral.
It's not the happiest conversation.
No, let's talk about wonderful things like doom metal and violence.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's.
So one of the many beautiful things about about classical music is that there are a lot of metalheads that play classical music, a
Yeah.
lot, and a lot of them came to UCSD all at the same time.
Right.
So like I had sort of a a marginal appreciation of metal and sort of like the popular stuffs, but I had no idea about all of the cores and what they
Mhm.
all mean. And you all very patiently explained it all to me and were very kind. And it's very fascinating. So so what is doom specifically? And like yeah, I guess that's a big question anyway. What is doom?
Okay. So, um, if we okay, so if we have to take a step back. Let
Is
me
this
put
where
on
you get
my
okay,
yeah.
actually
Hang on, let me put on my tweed jacket for a second. Um, so okay, so heavy metal, right? Metal is this kind of music. So because we kind of have to qualify it a little bit, right? So metal is music that's primarily guitar driven.
Hmm.
It's primarily using distortion, high volume, things like that. Um, the characteristics of heavy metal that really crystallized in the late 70s, it's definitely in the 80s, is this idea of like fast and aggressive, and a lot of song structure, and then a lot of super technical playing.
Yeah.
um, Doom metal is one of the few strains of heavy metal that kind of preserves slowness and openness. And I know a lot of people hate to think of it this way, but a kind of a lack of virtuosity. Not that not that it is any
No.
less, any less virtuosic or any less technical or any less skillful.
The V
Um,
word has been coming up a lot in these conversations, and I
yeah.
think everybody has we're all in agreement that virtuosity is not this sort of external flamboyant display.
Hmm.
It can be that, but virtuosity exists also in very quiet and very still and very like internal spaces too.
Right.
So like it is fucking hard to play low and slow. It is
Yes.
real hard.
Yeah. So okay. So to think of like one of the quintessential examples of doom metal, some people would qualify it as stoner metal,
Mhm.
stoner. It's like stoner metal, stoner doom, stoner rock. Um, there are so many different terms, and people have overlapping definitions. But one of the pieces of doom metal that people might be familiar with is "Dope Smoker" by the band Sleep, which is a 60-plus minute track. It's one track, and it goes for 60 minutes, and it switches from a duple meter to a triple meter at times. And when it's in, I forget the exact numbers, but like it's when it's in duple meter, it's at like 60 beats a minute, and when it's in
Mhm.
triple meter, like it's even slower. um, it's just it's dramatically slow. And yes, the riffs are slow. And when you compare Dope Smoker to Eruption by Eddie Van Halen,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people would attach virtuosity to the Van Halen, but there is, like you're saying, something about being able to sustain a song, a riff for an hour that is amazingly difficult.
Mhm.
Not only it puts a lot of strain on the player just to be able to maintain that, it puts a lot of strain on the musicianship, the songwriting ability to say, I'm going to create something interesting that lasts for an hour.
Mhm.
And then the demand on the listener to say, I'm going to pay attention to something for an hour. There's a lot of skill and virtuosity involved at this much larger time
Mhm.
frame.
And like in the interplay of like everybody in the room, right?
Right.
Everybody's sort of involved in this musical experience with the music king, if we
Uh-huh.
want to get
Yeah, you got to push up your glasses.
uh, Christopher Smalls. I recommend the book. It's really good. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think that yeah, the for me, it's like okay, so I come from opera and I come from like the land of dress up and being
No.
well, a little bit, and being basically a cartoon character all the time, or feeling like I'm a drag queen, which is also awesome.
Hmm.
But like I don't know, I find I've what I connected with in metal really is not so much that is that it is so theatrical
Hmm.
and in so many ways even doom it can be flamboyant and like just it's got this like theatricality that is epic. It is, and it
Yes.
is considered, and it is like it is specific, like nothing seems really accidental. It all
Hmm.
like every little piece of the puzzle seemed crafted and cared for, which I really appreciated it. I thought that was really great. You know.
Yeah, performance is a huge aspect
Mm-hmm.
of metal and spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whether you're looking at kind of the over the top flamboyant hair metal spandex bands,
Mm-hmm.
where they would have meticulously coiffed,
I love it.
blonde hair, or if you're looking at sort of the imagery, sort of the evil imagery of Black Sabbath,
Mm-hmm.
the whole the mythology of um, oh my God, Ozzy, biting the head off
Mm-hmm.
a bat.
Yeah.
That was such a huge part of the image of it. And then you get into black metal, um, which is funny because black metal it's supposed to be all about like personal, the will of the individual and stuff. But like they'll still put on their spikes and the corpse
Yeah, and the
paint and
paint.
yeah, and then there was again the mythology of the singer Dead from the band Mayhem, who would bury his clothes and then dig them up before a performance so that he could smell like death. Um, uh,
Oh man, and these are like
yeah,
not teenagers though, right? These are adult humans.
yeah, adult humans.
Cool,
um,
cool, cool.
and then in doom metal where there is, um, if you look at the band Sun, which again, getting into all the distinctions, it's either drone metal or just drone or drone doom or whatever. But they're dudes who put on cloaks and they fill up the room with fog, and it's like sort of a monochromatic lighting palette.
Yeah.
Um,
And then there's Guar.
yes, there is Guar.
There is Guar. Thank
Yeah, who
God
put
there's
on foam
Guar.
rubber alien
Yeah.
costumes and
And fallacies and oh,
yeah,
it's just so fabulous.
yeah. So yeah, theatricality is a big part of it, but then theatricality is also a big part of the audience
Yeah.
presentation, where people wear, you wear your oldest tour T-shirt to a
Yeah.
show, or you have to have the cut-off sleeves with tattoos underneath. You have to grow your hair out so that you can do the spectacular headbanging.
Yeah.
There is a ton of spectacle, a lot of performance. Um, and it's funny because my advisor for my dissertation was an opera scholar,
Yeah.
Dr. Nancy Guy,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of our overlap, was looking at the
Yeah.
spectacle of all of it. Um, but then also looking at some of the themes, because opera does a lot of operas revolve around death
Yep.
and kind of this over the top life and death
Pretty
struggle.
gruesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of metal deals with death and violence.
Hmm.
So looking at that was, it was really interesting to be able to look at that with somebody who's approaching some of the same themes from a dramatically different orientation.
Completely different palette, but
Yeah.
but speaking sort of the same language.
Right.
And so like and then so you take so in your creative practice you are like the perfect amalgam of like your wonderful technical, like you are a great horn player. You play the shit out of the tuba, which is a phrase that is should be said all the time. Quality journalism over at Project Blank. uh, so you are like technically wonderful, but you're also like a diehard metal kid. You're like, you know, a 16-year-old in your bedroom listening to heavy metal, and you found a really interesting way to combine those two parts of you, of your personality and your own creative practice, and in your own performance practice. So maybe let's talk a little bit about how that all kind of started to gel. Did you start to explore that pre Aquapuke, or was Aquapuke the birth of this Jonathan that could really kind of combine those two worlds?
Sure. So I was not the 16-year-old kid listening to metal. I know,
Oh,
shocker.
wow.
You heard it here first. Um, so,
Exclusive.
so growing up, so as a kid, my sister, who was a few years older than me, was giving me tapes of punk and grunge, and I was getting really into that sound world. But I was also getting classical music CDs from my parents, so I was getting really into that sound world. And the metal stuff always kind of stayed on the back burner a little bit, because I was trying to be a serious musician. I was trying to be really into classical music so that I could become a professional tuba player. Like, it was mapped out. And so again, it was the kind of thing where like my friends would give me the tapes of KMFDM and Pantera, listening to that stuff on the bus, going to a band festival. But then when I went home, I put on my Bach CDs and my Mozart CDs. Um,
Nerd. Sorry. Go on.
Can't handle this kind of abuse. Um, but then, as I got a little bit more into the sort of contemporary experimental stuff in college, then I sort of eased up my boundaries a little bit, my own personal boundaries, and I was kind of allowing myself to very openly like some of this stuff. And then again, I kind of put that on the back burner a little bit getting into grad school, because again, it kind of felt like I needed to be serious
Yeah.
and academic and scholarly. And one of the difficult things about heavy metal, and I think it's one of the things that's really difficult for people to reconcile, is that at its core, heavy metal is this music that has some element of aggression, or I hate to say that heavy metal is about violence, but there's a lot of violent imagery and violent lyrics and
Yeah.
violent themes in heavy metal, and a lot of heavy
And the
metal has this.
experience of heavy metal, I mean, like the pit, and like my
Yeah,
first time seeing the wall was like horrifying. but
yeah,
but like, yeah, the whole thing, it is a violent thing. Yeah.
yeah, and there has, for most of its history, that has been a strain of, misogynistic. Can I say assholes?
Yeah. Yeah, you can say
Misogynistic,
misogynistic.
misogynistic assholes who are part of the scene,
Yeah.
and homophobic assholes who are part of the scene, and racist assholes and
Yeah.
xenophobic assholes. There are jerks in the metal scene,
Yep.
and just some really horrible people in the metal scene, and some of the quote unquote like classics, the hallmarks of heavy metal history, have been rooted in misogyny and racism and homophobia and xenophobia and just really disgusting politics and personal worldviews. And so I think my gut reaction was just to say, okay, well, I don't want anything to do with that, because this is so horrific, um, just so disgusting and abhorrent. I'm going to remove myself from it. Um, but what I kind of kept coming back to was that it's still enjoyable. There's something visceral about it, and that was kind of where the stuff started, where Clint McCallum and I got together, and it was kind of like, let's do something fun. Let's do
Yeah.
something that feels good, something where we can actually make visceral music that uses our bodies, that really connects with us deep down. And at the time, I was writing my qual papers about, the consumption of digital media and the stuff that was super disembodied. And it's all like you type on the keyboard to get music, and then it plays through tiny little speakers, and nothing about it vibrates your body, and
Mhm.
nothing about it uses your body. And I was feeling so lost. And so to put the tuba through some distortion pedals through an amp and just bathe in loud sound,
Mhm.
there was something really magical about that. And then I started to find that there were a lot of people out there who had problems with the politics of heavy metal, and a lot of musicians who have problems with the politics of heavy metal, and a lot of people who are trying to use the aesthetic, the sonic aesthetic and the visceral aesthetic of heavy metal to communicate ideas that are, anti-misogynist,
Mhm.
anti-racist, anti-homophobic, anti-xenophobic. They haven't gotten the publicity because it's not as flashy, but they are out there. And so I kind of tried to align a little bit more with that, and it it just kind of became more okay for me to participate, like to play in the sound world. And that's when yeah, just kind of like it, it was really hitting me like, this is about the sound, this is about the experience. And what I really loved about the sound and the experience was the volume, and just feeling my body vibrate, and
Mhm.
like being aware of my guts,
Mhm.
you know, like in a very Guar sense,
Yeah.
being aware.
Of all the
There's this
juicy
great,
bits.
yeah, I come back to this. I'm also a big Simpsons nerd. I can quote almost any episode of The Simpsons from the first like 8 years of the show.
Come at me.
Um, so there's the great episode where Lisa has a crush on Nelson,
Mm.
and she's asking him like, what do you feel? What's inside? And he says, I don't know, guts,
Guts.
black stuff, a couple of Slim Jims. But it's like guts and black stuff. There's like
Yeah.
there's stuff inside of us, and like in daily life, we're not aware of the guts and black stuff and Slim Jims inside of us. Um, and
Well, I
when
don't know. I think you're very aware of the Slim Jim inside of you. I immediately am very aware if I get whenever I'm eating them.
you're
Whoa.
one with the Slim Jim.
Shouldn't have done
Um,
that.
yeah.
But like something about
uh,
I don't know, but even as like even as a participant in the audience, this it goes back to spectacle too, right? That
mhm.
you're putting your body through it. There's you are your whole self is just like it's like your whole body and instrument just go. You take the big breath in, and then you just roar
Uh-huh.
for as long as you can roar. And then it's like it's in one way it's very soothing because you're in this kind of rhythm of breathing in and screaming out. But
Mhm.
then it takes a pretty serious physical toll on you. I mean, I don't remember how many shows I saw where you ended up with a bloody mouthpiece in your tuba. So like that part of the kind of putting your body through it is a violent act.
Mhm.
You're playing so aggressively and so hard while wearing mini skirts often. There's that too. We haven't talked about your performative queerness, which is
Nope,
great.
have not.
Uh, so yeah, I guess to talk about that, like the decision to really explore the limits of your physicality.
Sure. So again, I think some of that was coming out of, coming back to this idea like, let's just have fun, let's just do something we enjoy. and and kind of like what's part of that is that we're not using our bodies in a lot of the other, like in classical music. Like obvious, okay, tons of rigorous training, lots of self-control, lots of
Mm-hmm.
self-discipline. But the technique that I learned to be a good tubist, um,
Mm-hmm.
it like I learned to breathe so as to not hurt myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, what happens if I breathe so hard for so long that I literally hurt myself? What's going to happen musically at that point? You
Mm-hmm.
know, let's try it and see. And it kind of became, like, what happens to our bodies as instruments, as music making instruments? What happens to my relationship with the tuba as I reach these limits that I've always trained myself to not quite hit,
Mm-hmm.
or to work around? Um, and we ended up finding, I think, some pretty interesting um, aesthetic. I don't want to say dead ends, but like little points that we got, because it's like, once you hit a wall, how much farther can you go? You
Yeah.
know, like, once I find out, okay, that's how long I can breathe for before I'm going to pass out. You know, I'll do almost anything in the name of art, but passing out and dropping my tuba, I'm not
Yes.
too keen on that. You know,
We do have limits, huh?
or the piece that I worked on with Brian Griffith Loeb, where we took the Penderecki Capriccio for tuba, which is it's such a ridiculous little piece of music. It's only a few minutes long, but it takes so much effort and energy to learn. And then, the myth of it is, like, he had a commission from an orchestra to write a tuba piece, and he waited until, like, the day before or something to write it, and just quickly just scribbled something down.
My guy
And
Penderecki.
yeah, and like, it makes no sense with the way that
Uh,
classical tubists learn how to play. It's so antithetical to a lot of the ingrained phenomenology of playing the tuba.
oh, that's my
And so
favorite
Brian and I were
word.
just
What is
phenomenology.
phenomenology? Explain that
So,
like I'm
oh,
five. Again, I've asked you to explain this to me a million times.
well, it's been a while since I've tried to explain it, so I'm going to be a little bit rusty here. But
Great.
um, so it's a philosophy that takes into account phenomena and the physical perception of phenomena. And so it's kind of like, the way that I've used it anyway is, um, approaching like writing for the tuba from a phenomenological standpoint is, you know, considering what it takes for a tubist to breathe. And like, Brian and I had to notate breath,
Mm-hmm.
because what we were finding was that the way that I had ingrained the process of breathing was incompatible with the music that he was trying to write for me,
Mm-hmm.
or at least with the notation that he was trying to write for me. So I had to tell him to write in the breathing, so that as I'm reading his music, I can tell myself when to breathe,
Yeah.
because otherwise it made no sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, so we wrote this piece together, where it kind of took all of the idiocy of the Penderecki, and blew it all out. It all, like, just took it to an extreme. So it ended up being like a 15-minute long piece, where I'm just doing these insane transitions between register and playing technique. And the whole idea was, if I can play long enough to the point where my lips fail, but then I keep trying to play the stuff that I can't play anymore, what does that sound like?
Yeah.
If I keep trying to shift registers to the point where I can't actually do it accurately anymore, what does that sound like? If I try to breathe so quickly that I can no longer breathe effectively, what does that sound like? Um, and that was really fascinating to me. You know, if and not necessarily in that new complexity way, where it's like, let's write something really hard and force the performer into this new set state of being, but then they're going to practice it for a few years anyway and get really good at it.
Yeah.
This was like, let's actually perform the act of being uncomfortable and not being able to perform this accurately, but that's an accurate performance.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. You're sort of like taking all of the classical music perfectionism, which this is another theme that keeps coming up among all of our contemporary music friends, is that perfection is not real. Uh,
No.
Doesn't exist. It is a myth.
Yeah, I
You
remember when
can
I
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah when I first got to UCLA, there was a brand new head of the brass faculty, Jens Lindemann, world renowned trumpet player. He played with the Canadian brass for a long time and had this amazing solo career. And one of the first things he said to us when we all gathered together was, we're brass players. There's no such thing as a perfect performance. And to hear that from a guy with a career, all he does is play the trumpet.
Yeah.
And for him to say, you are going to miss a note, regardless of your preparation,
Hmm.
regardless of your mindset, regardless of your beta blocker consumption or how many damn bananas you eat before you play, like you are going to miss a note.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that was revelatory for me.
yeah.
I don't know. I kind of found that through, honestly, through contemporary music, where the music was like considerably harder. It's
Uh-huh.
not sight readable. I actually had to do math and draw out some diagrams and cry a lot um, and then at the end of it, I was just like, oh shit, I can just like it. I know that like I was talking about this with Judy the other day too. That like for me, I think knowing that a performance is going to be recorded freaks me out even more
Mhm.
than just the act of performing anyway. Because then it's like, okay, well, that has to be the artifact of the piece, and then it has to be absolutely right, and people are going to like be score following while they listen to it, and it's like that, of course, never happens, and people who do that are jerks. But yeah, it was like liberating. It's like, oh, okay, so it becomes more like play rather than like actuation, right? It
Uh-huh.
becomes it becomes more of an engagement with the piece of music. And have you like, I don't know, have you gone back to your to your to your oldies and maybe revisited them as a more mature adult who knows more things?
Uh, I mean, to be fair, I've kind of had to confront the reality that's like I don't know that I'm ever gonna perform. Like, if I'm not gonna perform the Penderecki again, you know,
Yeah,
do I? You know, I have a day job. I have two beautiful children,
yeah.
and I try to be a musician. So my time in all of this is already strained. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
do I really want to go back to the Penderecki and try to learn it again, and and then just put it away after that?
Yeah,
Or do I want to make music that I really fucking enjoy
yeah.
and have a blast doing it and then go see my kids? That's I think as I've grown older as a musician, I've had to accept a lot of that. Um, but more than accepting, just embracing. Like
Embracing it, yeah.
there is music that I love making, and I'm going to make that music. And I don't really want to force myself to try to make music that follows rules that I like disagree with at this point, or
Hmm.
find to be really lacking or inefficient or insufficient.
Or
Uh,
abusive.
yeah, that's a good yeah abusive exactly. Um, unless I'm writing the rules that make it abusive,
Right,
um,
yeah,
then I
yeah,
will gladly engage in that um, in the name of art.
yeah. Well, that is like the perfect button. That's it. That's the place to end it. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for talking
Of
with me
course,
about
yeah.
noise and sound and pain and
I
pleasure.
hope some of that was useful.
All of it. It's so
Okay,
good. And you're so great. I'm really appreciative. Thank you for taking the time
of
to
course.
talk with me.
It's so good to talk to you.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.